Welcome to episode 9 of Raise the Bar with me, your host, Daryl LaBar. In this episode, I'm going to go through an example when unit tests are helpful for making future changes, not just for initial development of the code. So when trying to weigh the cost of unit testing and to see if it actually makes economical sense for your company that you're working with to do them or not, most developers and project managers are only concerned with the initial speed or cost of to market for the actual plugin or code they're writing. But an important part of the equation is the time savings that unit testing provides when maintaining the code after the first deployment. Unit tests provide an unbelievable safety net for future changes, helping to ensure that you don't actually break anything when you make a change. This benefit is really hard to actually quantify, but if you ask any developer that's actually had unit tests to do their work in and do changes in, they will speak of the volumes of time that it saves and the higher quality code that it helps to provide. And even if you can't give a good solid number for how much time savings and cost savings and quality savings you have when you actually have unit tests to use in your project, I would argue that the unit testing, at least CDS plugins, the CRM plugins, will pay for itself straight out of the gate. And the way that I argue this is if you take a developer that has done unit testing and you give them 8 to 16 hours to actually overcome that learning curve, and any time you learn a new technology, you're going to have a learning curve. And if you give them that time to overcome that learning curve, they can usually create the plugin with the unit test in the same amount of time as creating the plugin without them. That is because of the lengthy development cycle that's required to make a change to a plugin. To recompile, to redeploy, retrigger the plugin in the online org, and then repeat the whole process. And that takes time. And when you do it locally, it's much, much faster. You don't have to redeploy, you just change, compile. You can compile on the fly when you're testing something and figure out what the issue is and fix it right then. And you don't have to spend any time recompiling and sending it across the wire and manually retriggering it. It's all done there on the developer's machine. Very, very quick developer cycles. So when done right, unit testing will result in nearly the same amount of speed to market for a plugin, only with the unit testing, you actually have a unit test when you're done that you can fall back on, and when you don't do unit tests, you've got nothing to fall back on. So huge, huge gap there. So let's take a look at the code. Here we have a method, isBizTalkUser, that's being used by a plugin to determine if the user that is being passed in as user ID happens to match the name of one of our BizTalk users. Okay? The purpose of this, the reason we have it, is we have a lot of integrations with BizTalks that when it comes over, sometimes it will do the same thing that the plugin is doing, or maybe it's already done something the plugin is doing, and we don't want to trigger it twice. So currently it's being used in a single plugin, and we're realizing, hey, we need these in multiple places. We're also realizing that we're going to need to use this in a plugin that's going to fire a lot more often. The current plugin that's using this is not being used very often. We want to put it in a central place that we can be used in lots of different places. We want it to be more efficient. Okay, so the problem with it right now is that it's doing a single call per time the plugin executes to go get a user. It's not an expensive call. It's just going up, getting the actual user ID, getting the full name, and then checking the full name with what it has locally. Ideally, we want to change it so we don't actually have to do that call every single time. Okay. The way that we're going to go through and change it is we're going to go through and rather than getting the full name locally and then comparing it, we're going to do a query where we say, hey, does this name end with? Does this name contain this particular value? The problem here is, off the top of my head, I get confused whether it's a like or contains or what I should actually be using to implement this. So here's where our actual plugin test is going to come help us because we can actually debug straight into where we're at and what we're doing and not have to spend time searching online for something or trying to figure out exactly what that syntax is and having to deploy it and testing it manually multiple times. So let's take a look at this. So this method here, getEntity, is actually an extension method that's provided by the DLB libraries. It says, hey, go and get me the entity of type system user, and it casts it to the system user by that GUID, and then it uses a projection to go and determine the column sets it's going to go ahead and grab, and then returns that back the entity, and then we're just getting the full name. So that's how this is working currently. If you're interested in using this type of method on your current project, just go ahead and download the Visual Studio Solution Accelerator from the Xrm Toolbox plugin store, and it will install it for you. It's done using source-only NuGet packages, and so there's no actual IL merge required. It's a really nice feature. Highly recommend it. Let's go ahead and take a first stab at what this is supposed to look like here. So rather than getting the actual name, we're going to get a list of users. So we're going to use this getEntities method, and the type we're going to get is the system user. And so now we need the actual column set here. and you can actually pass in a column set. In this case, I'll do another projection here. So same as before, u dot full name, cool. And then we need to do our condition here. So here's where we actually pass in our condition expression to say what exactly we're looking for. New condition expression. Look at the field name here, so system user.fields.full name, and then condition operator like, and then I think it's a star. I can't remember if it's a star percent, but where it basically ends with BizTalk postfix. Okay, let's put this on a new line here, and let's see. Okay, this looks good here. Give me all users, where the full name basically ends with the BizTalk user postfix. Looks good. Now let's go ahead and run our unit test here. So go to my test explorer, and we've got 5 unit tests already for this plugin. So I'm just going to pick this first one here, some opportunity equipment credit. Yep, that should hit my my plugin here. So I'll go ahead and do that. Oh, before we do that, we need to actually go through and hit the actual server. So here's my system unit test settings.userconfig file. And in here, we have a setting here on line 16 that says, hey, do we want to run local in memory or do we want to hit the actual server? And then depending on your connection prefix there in 18 in your list of connections there, it's going to depend on what actual server you're going to go hit. So this is all part of the XRM unit test framework. It's free, it's out there in the open source. Again, it gets installed automatically if you choose to via the Visual Studio Solution Accelerator that I mentioned earlier. And I'm doing a full day-long session on it at the CRMUG in Florida this year. So if it's something you're interested in, please sign up for that. I'm trying to get that whole session filled. It's a pre-conference event, so I'm trying to get it filled so I can do it again next year as well. So please do that. So let's keep on going. All right, let's change this from true to false. So now it's going to actually hit the server. We'll save that. We'll go and run the actual test itself. So I'm just going to select debug the test. All right, so we've got a breakpoint hit here. So let's go ahead and see how many we have. We have 0. We should have 4. So we probably need to use the percent here rather than the star. All right, now that that's updated, let's go ahead and drag this up here and run this again. Okay, we have 4 now. That's exactly what we wanted, 4 users. So that must have been what we wanted. We wanted the percent rather than the star. So that's great. So I basically demonstrated here how to actually take the unit test and use it to actually help improve code going forward. So this is something you could show to maybe a manager or something that's not going to be actually doing the dev work to say, hey, here's an example where even the unit test, even though it's helpful at the beginning, it's also helpful throughout the maintenance lifecycle of the code base as well. Okay, so we've got that part done. Now we just need to move into the actual implementation here. So it'd be able to probably throw this in a hash set. So let's get started on that. All right, I'll need to declare my hash here. So if our hash equals users dot select, and let's see, what do I need to select from this thing? I need the ID. That's all I need is the ID. Okay, all right. So give me all the users, and now I got to convert that from the IEnumerable into a hash set. So new hash set of type GUID in this case, and then it's an IEnumerable. So I just be able to pass it in just like that, and then we have our hash set. So we're good there. Let's go ahead and execute that line to populate it and step through, and there's our GUIDs, just what we needed. Now to return a Boolean, so we just need to check to see that the GUID that we pass in is in our hash collection. User ID, okay, let's delete that. Okay, and actually we can check this real quick in our immediate window. We'll just paste it in there and verify that yes, the user that we have is not currently the BizTalk user, and there we go. So the only thing left to do is to now move this function to a method or to an area that's usable from multiple plugins, and to make it thread safe. Make sure this hash that we want to cache this, and we want to cache it in a thread safe manner so that it's done once and not going to have any issues. So yeah, that's another problem for another day. But hopefully this is a good example for using unit testing for being able to kind of go through and mock through what your code needs to do and what changes you need to make and how you need to make it and allow you to do that. So and hopefully that's helpful for you. So hopefully it raises your bar as you raise the bar. So yes, if you're not using a testing framework like XRMusin Test or Fake XRMeasy, highly recommend you start doing that now. And if you are interested at all in unit testing, I highly recommend you sign up for my class at the CRMUG this fall. Link is down in the description, and you can sign up and spend a day hanging out with me at the very worst and at the very best, learning how you can add unit testing in your day-to-day development work on your CRM CDS projects. So thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop a line and put in a comment in the video. I'd appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye.